Councillor Les Burrows.
Could we have the webcasting announcement, please?
This meeting is to be webcast. Members are reminded of the need to activate their microphones before speaking. The Chairman would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or for another such use by third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery.
Thank you. And could we have apologies for absence, please?
Chairman, there are several apologies for absence tonight. Apologies have been received from, just get my list up, she said. Councillor Lucas, Councillor Hadley, Councillor Pugsley, Councillor Heather, Councillor Baldwin, Councillor Bromwich, Councillor Yarrell, Councillor Will Kaufman, Councillor Howard Kaufman, and Councillor... That's it, sorry. I got carried away. I was reading the people who were here. Apologies about that, Chairman.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, John. John. You have an apology.
Thanks. And Councillor Barnard, please, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Now, another one.
Thank you, Chair. No, if I can apologise for Councillor Nowicki as well, he's stuck at work.
Okay. Thank you. You've got those two. Can we have declarations of interest? No? Nobody. Lovely, thank you. Can we have... I should add that I will be a voting chairman tonight, as I always am. Now, if we go to the report of the Constitutional Working Group, PAS review. Would Alan Lyon like to... Yes? Would Alan Lyon like to...
Thank you very much, Chairman. This report that's being presented this evening represents the work of the Constitution Working Group. It takes into account the Planning Advisory Service report that was undertaken and provides the direction for the Council. The report also includes the members' workshop that all members were invited to, and there was a consensus of opinion that the changes proposed were good and accepted, and this was then taken forward into the Constitution Working Group. The Constitution Working Group did ask for certain amendments, and they have been incorporated into the paper. I'd like to thank very much Graham Courtney and Nigel Richardson for Graham actually carried out quite a lot of work while he was on holiday, so my thanks to him for doing that. The report itself indicates best practice and also improves the efficiency. We are under threat of special measures for our larger major projects, and I think this is something that has been looked at for some considerable time and is a refreshing change that we can actually improve the efficiency of the Council in bringing these forward. So I'll leave it at that now, and I will open the debate for anybody else to make any comments. Thank you.
The floor is open. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't wish to enter the debate at this stage, but I just want to ask a question. This is a major change that we're considering tonight. It's an extra meeting thrown together in August. 20% of our councillors aren't here tonight. Could I have a very clear explanation for why we have to make this decision tonight and not in our first scheduled meeting after the summer break? Because I think to make a decision, unless there's an absolutely overriding reason, which I haven't heard or I haven't read, I think to make this really crucial long-term decision tonight when 20% of the councillors aren't here, and that's not unreasonable in the second week of the school holidays to expect that, and it wasn't a scheduled meeting. I certainly would like an explanation on why it's so urgent that we make the decision tonight.
Councillor Whitbread, could you?
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, we have good reason to bring this forward this evening in such a timely fashion. If you remember the first Cabinet meeting of the new municipal year, we had a report from PAS and members of PAS present online at the meeting to explain why we have to change the way that we do planning in this district. We're completely out of kilter with most councils across the whole United Kingdom. And that has reflected in some major applications being turned down and has meant that this council now is under threat of losing control of planning like independent-run Uttlesford. That would be disastrous for this district. It would be disastrous for us because the principal function of this council is to decide on planning applications. It would be disastrous for the budget-making process because if we lost control of planning, not only would we not get the fees that help towards paying for frontline services, we would be doing all the work and then passing it to Bristol, where no one has any local knowledge whatsoever to make decisions for us. So I make no apology for bringing this forward in quick order. We were very clear back at our first Cabinet meeting in June, that's what we're going to do. Councillor Lyon has done a brilliant piece of work with the Constitution Working Group, and the members of that committee understood the importance of this coming forward now. We need to get this in place by the autumn / early winter. If we don't, we are at risk, and I can say no more than that. And to give you some idea of the cost of planning applications, which have been declined in recent times by us as a council, as members, and sometimes as delegated, has cost this council in the region of £200,000. That's more than what we pay towards services that we support in our community that are very important to us, and put those services under threat as well. It's bad news for Epping Forest, it's bad news for our partners, and it's most of all bad news for our residents if we don't act this evening, and therefore that's our reason for bringing this forward. I agree with Councillor Murray, it's not perfect timing, it's the only timing we have.
Thank you very much. Councillor Merriday.
Thank you. I'd also like to add a couple of things to that. I've recently been to a Planning Advisory Service conference stroke training for planning committees. We are definitely an outlier, but what is really concerning is the the major ones. We are actually at risk at the quality of them. 9.8% of the refusals that went to appeal were actually overturned at appeal. If it got to the 10%, then it'd be taken away. But what's even more important, and that went to March 23 because they give time for the appeals to run through. The last few times we have had also some appeals overturned, but the worrying thing is it's a 2-year rolling system, and we were given comparable ones with other authorities, and this doesn't go away. We are actually having to act on it very, very quickly. I hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess just open it to questions at that point in time.
Yeah. Can we open this to questions from anybody, please? Any members? No. Councillor Wiskin.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I have some comment as to the status of our 9.8% given the recent appeal which was upheld at the Chigwell nursery site, which was for 65 homes. Has that taken us into special measures?
If you can answer that, officer.
I don't mind answering this. As Councillor Dadd says, this is a rolling 2-year assessment, and it is looked at quarterly. The 9.8 was taken at the final quarter of 2023. We've obviously now had the first quarter of 23-24, and actually, which does include the recent appeal that you refer to, and actually that has pushed us over. At the moment, the latest assessment, which as I say is first quarter of 23-24, we're actually at 12.9%, so we are over the 10%. It doesn't immediately go into special measures, just so you're aware, we're not, it wouldn't, the government would write to us and warn us, and we would have an opportunity to go back, and obviously if we do get that letter, I think part of our argument will be that we are introducing these changes. We've taken advice from PAS, we are implementing those, and obviously it is going to take some time given how far back we have to go. This is, as I say, this is reporting from last year. It is going to take some time for this to make a difference, but I think that us actually bringing this into force will be our key argument should we get one of those letters. But at the moment, we are at serious risk because we are over the 10%.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse.
No, actually, that answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. Right, Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to mention to everybody this is not a knee-jerk reaction to the Planning Advisory Services report. This is a piece of work that's been going on for about 18 months between your planning officers and portfolio holders. We were very fortunate to have PAS come along and go through and review everything, and I think we would be very unwise not to take their recommendations on board. The numbers they're suggesting are in line with their recommendations and also other councillors. I did a piece of work 18 months ago. There are councils in the area where there are 5 members sit on the planning committee. There are others with 8, there are others with 9, there are some with actually 11, but the majority are well below everybody attending. And the changes here are purely on the Constitution, and as been mentioned by Councillor Lyon, those were worked through at the working group. They were worked through at the Constitution working group and also discussed at Cabinet and passed by a majority. I think it's true to point out that this planning is a service we have to provide. It's not only we have to provide it, it's at fees set by government. And anybody that's looked at the budgets over the last few years knows how much the overspend has been on planning services. This goes some way to alleviating that and helping the budget process, because if we don't do this, then something else will have to come out of the budget at some time in the future. Based on that, I recommend that we adopt the recommendations on the agenda 1A to 1I. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sue Jones, Councillor Sue Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit it's always a hard read when it looks like as a council we're being criticised, but this is such a timely need. However, as you read it, fresh ideas do come forward, and I would, Chairman, like to propose a fairly minor amendment, but one that I think is quite crucial. Town and parish councils play a crucial role in the planning process. Residents' first port of call for help advice on the planning system is often the town and parish councils. And town and parish councils can often give a detailed and insightful information that may not be completely evident to the planning officers. And I'm concerned that the triggers that we're looking at now, in their current form, possibly diminish the voice of town and parish councils. So I would therefore like to propose a slight amendment. I think it would probably fit in after point 4 on page 24, reading to the effect that if a parish or town council object to an application and confirm they are willing to attend the planning committee meeting, that this triggers the application to come to the committee in exactly the same way as it does at the moment. I just think losing that ability for the parish council to object to an application and confirm that they will attend the meeting really diminishes their role. So I would like to propose that additional trigger, please.
And you have a seconder?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be very happy to second that amendment. I think it's a really important amendment. We've all seen from sitting in planning committees the vital role that parish councils and town councils can provide, and sometimes a different perspective as well. I think this is a really important amendment, which I'm very happy to second. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Michael Owen.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there was just one minor amendment I wanted to table, and that was item F. It says the ward councillor be afforded the right to speak, but then at the end it says it's at the discretion of the planning committee chairman. I would like to see that discretion removed. I think the ward councillor should have the right to come back if possible. I think also it's limited to 3 minutes for the ward councillor. If possible, could we remove the limit of 3 minutes? Because I think there are certain items where perhaps they would need longer. Thank you.
Can we carry on with the First Amendment debate, please? Yes, Alan.
Chairman, just on that amendment, I think the idea is okay, but there's no time limit set for councillors to comment on applications, and they are able to actually come along to a meeting and represent their wards and their members. So as far as I am aware, we didn't actually set any time limit on councillors coming along and speaking.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought the First Amendment was the one about the parishes and towns being able to bring their objections to committee. I was going to put the same amendment, seconded by Councillor Amos, but it's slightly different. The current arrangement is that a parish or town can come and speak if they have another resident come with them. I don't think that's really necessary. But I do think that this current arrangement where it says that the parish and towns are part of 5 objections is wrong, because residents come to a town, a parish council, they put their objections. If the parish or town puts in an objection, they're speaking on behalf of all those residents. Those residents don't expect to object again. So I think it should come direct to committee as long as they have valid planning grounds, because the original change was made because some of the parishes put forward objections which weren't really based on valid planning grounds. So I think they should have the right to come straight to committee if they object, but it has to be on valid planning grounds. So that would be my amendment.
Thank you. We need to go back actually to discuss the amendment of Councillor Sue Jones.
So could you remind us?
Could you remind us what that is, Sue?
The amendment was that the existing arrangement and the existing trigger, whereby if a parish council object to the planning application and confirm that they are willing to attend the planning committee, that the application is heard by the planning committee.
Right, Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
I put an amendment to that amendment, haven't I? Because I have said that they have the right to go if this is valid planning grounds and they don't need an extra resident to come as the current arrangements are. Isn't that the system that's debated first?
You don't need an additional person.
Is it part of this? So now the Councillor Whitehouse needs to move that and seconded, then we need to decide whether that amendment
Covers the other amendment.
becomes part of
Yeah. Is there a seconder for your amendment? Thank you, Councillor.
So, sorry, is it a point of principle? Has the leader got a point of...
So, Leader, have you got a point of principle?
Thank you, Chairman. Initially, I rise to support Councillor Jones's amendment and seconded by Councillor Holly-Whitbread. The reason I support that amendment is its pure simplification of the system that we currently have, that if a parish or town council has a valid objection planning objection, that they are prepared to come and talk to the committee, then that will happen. But I think it becomes a complication if you start talking about the resident coming along with the parish council. What Councillor Jones is saying is very straightforward, recognising the consultee role of the towns and parish councils, being able to come and speak at the meeting if they're prepared to do so. If they're not prepared to do so, then obviously the objection doesn't stand.
Yeah. Now, we go back to Councillor Whitehouse's. Is there a seconder for your motion? No.
Sorry, as a point of clarification, our amendment is saying that the parish and town council wouldn't have to be accompanied by a resident, just to make it simple. And I think this is an overcomplication to say otherwise. So just that the parish and town council can come along and object with planning reasons, and I'd like to move that amendment. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, have you a seconder for that? What does that mean?
So I think we need to ask Councillor Whitehouse whether she's prepared to accept. Is she prepared to accept and withdraw her amendment?
Which amendment?
The one that Councillor Whitehouse made. So is she prepared to accept the arguments made on this side of the chamber and withdraw her amendments?
Councillor Whitehouse, are you prepared to accept the amendment of Sue Jones? And
I'd just like clarification, please, from Natalie Boateng as to what it is. There seems to be some disagreement as whether they do have to bring a resident or not at the moment. I thought the current arrangement was it had to be town council and a resident. If I'm wrong, then, yeah, happy to support that. But I thought that was the current arrangement.
right, Sue Jones. Councillor Sue Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I just don't see any reason why a parish council should bring along another resident. I think that could put the parish council in an awkward position. I think the parish council speak on behalf of a group of people, and I think to simplify the whole thing, I would keep as is, in the parish council can attend.
Chairman, I'm sorry, but I think there's misinformation here. I'm not suggesting that they should bring a resident. I was saying we don't want that, but my understanding was it was the current system. I'm seeking clarification as to whether the current system is you have to bring a resident or you don't, because obviously there's some misunderstanding.
Move to a vote.
You can quieten down, please.
Thank you, Chairman. No, that is not the current position. The parish council does not have to bring a resident with them.
In that case, I'm happy to support the amendments.
Hold on, because there's two people want to speak, so can we just check they didn't want to speak on that amendment?
I think that amendment's now been withdrawn.
Right.
So we're going back to Sue Jones's amendment.
Right.
And so we need to see if anybody else wants to talk around.
So these people that wanted to speak before, what do we do about them?
Sorry?
These three people that wanted to speak before.
Right, so they get to, so they get to speak on Sue Jones's amendment.
Right,
now.
okay.
Right.
So just for clarity, you want to clarify that, Chairman?
Just for clarity, everyone, we're going back to Sue Jones's original amendment. And does anyone wish to speak on that?
So, I'm sorry, Chairman, I didn't actually hear that. I do apologise.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a croaky throat today. We're going back to your amendment now. And does anyone wish to speak on that? We have some names here, actually. Pardon?
If there's nobody who wants to speak, we'll go to the vote.
If no one actually wants to speak on that, then can we go to the vote on that, please? Okay, right. All in favour of it?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, so that one becomes the substantive.
Yep, that is a substantive.
Okay.
So we still have three councillors that want to speak.
I think then that they didn't stand up and speak when you
But that was
asked them again.
before Sue. That was before the amendment. Before she.
So this is back on. So we're now back onto the
Right,
whole
so
agenda.
Right.
If
Okay.
they still
So I
want to
think they
speak,
wanted to speak on
then
the
they can.
agenda.
Now, I'm informed that we go back to the original agenda, and anyone wish to speak on that? John Whitehouse.
Thanks, Chairman. And we have throughout this process become in danger of confusing two slightly different things. And one is the way we organise our planning committee, and the other is our planning performance, which obviously is much wider than just what happens to planning committees, because first of all, not all applications are considered by planning committees. Some are considered under delegated powers, some are considered, well, they're either considered under delegated powers or they're considered by a committee, and of course some of those overturned did not go to committee. And the other thing is, performance at appeal depends on how we present our case at appeal, whether we put forward the right experts, what grounds there are, and indeed advice given beforehand. So one of the disappointments, I think, of this process is the way that, I don't quite understand why, PAS's focus was so narrowly focused towards only planning committees and not the wider, the wider issues that factor in to planning appeals, which includes things like application consultation as well. Having said that, there clearly is a case for reviewing planning committees, just like any other activity we do, because just because we've done something in the past does not mean it's the right way to do things in the future. And I can see the attractiveness, particularly from an officer point of view, of not having to prepare so many agenda, not having to write so many reports, and being able to divert some of that resource towards, hopefully, giving good quality planning advice and getting through planning applications in a timely fashion and so forth. So the amendments that we're putting forward tonight are relatively minor, but would at least improve the proposals put forward if they are adopted tonight. And the first one is just to tweak the numbers so that the upper end of the range that Councillor Williamson mentioned earlier. We are quite vulnerable. If 7 is the quorum and 9 is the number of members, that does make the committees vulnerable to inquiracy. I mean, we see with the scrutiny committees, which have 11, so that we're consistent with the planning committees in this case, that quite often you do easily get 3 or 4 members not turning up. And even with the substitute system, that can happen. So I think it does make the committees more robust in terms of being able to get through the business they've been tasked with. It does mean that you've got a fuller mix of people on the committees. As an even number, it means that as an odd number, it's in line with the odd numbers on most of the rest of our committees. Recommendation G is this new concept that's been brought in that ward members shouldn't vote on things in their ward, which is not something we apply in licensing, not something we apply when portfolio holders are considering grant applications, it's not something we consider. What we consider is, do people have a code of conduct conflict of interest, which is what is set out in statute and is what is set out in the code of conduct. And clearly that should be upheld. But there are all sorts of reasons. People may live in a different ward than they represent. People may represent wards at county levels as well as district levels. It's a complicating factor. It would mean in some places people need to leave a meeting partway through and come back and have a substitute for that part of the meeting, which our current constitution doesn't make provision for. It's a complicating and unnecessary part of new proposals. I agree with whoever it was earlier who said that we should simplify where possible, and this simplifies things and maintains the fact that if you appoint someone to that committee, you expect them to do the job on that committee. And the third recommendation is people can have all sorts of relevant experience, which isn't necessarily planning experience when they join the council. There's all sorts of regulatory and quasi-judicial environments which have read across to planning considerations. It seems entirely wrong to prevent people who may have relevant experience from coming onto the council and serving on a planning committee if members have voted for that person to be on the council. So I move those 3 amendments. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I'd like to take those one by one. Who is the seconder? Thank you very much. So we're going to take... The recommendation was, Amendment 1, was delete 9 and replace with 11, so that the whole recommendation reads, the number of members on each planning committee be 11, as laid out within the suggested amendments to Article 10 of the Constitution.
So does anybody want to speak to that?
Does anyone want to speak on that? No? Just Councillor Bond?
I tend to support Councillor Whitehouse's amendments, purely because certainly in the previously the Constitution Working Party, I think 9 is too small a number, and for group leaders making substitutions, if you can't substitute a member for a whole planning meeting because he or she happens to represent a ward which includes one of the application sites, I simply think that's absurd. So I tend to agree with Councillor Whitehouse's amendments. And I've got, in addition, I don't know whether it's sensible to ask it now, the whole thrust of this amendment is, I think, to put an additional barrier between the people and the council. And that, I think, is very regrettable. I think the Area Plans Committee system, which was inaugurated before I became a member of this council or even the parish council, did bring a great deal of local knowledge to the system. I agree it's cumbersome, and what I don't agree, I never did agree with, was the requirement that every member should sit on the relevant planning committee. I think that was absurd. I think it made the numbers on planning committees too large. But I do think that 11 rather than 9 is a sensible move for the reasons that Councillor Whitehouse has mentioned, plus the problems of substitutions. So I would support those amendments.
We are taking the first one first, so that's single. Fine. Is there anyone else who wish to speak on that? I have Mary Dadd's name. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a bit of confusion from what I understand from Councillor Whitehouse's suggestions, because on the Constitution Working Group, we were just looking at the Constitution itself rather than the process, and the process is being dealt with separately. For example, the substitutes, there was some discussion about substitutes coming from other... Let's start again. Those people going on planning, there was suggested that there should be better training for them, and that the councillors on the planning committees could be used as substitutes if the other A or B was down for some reason. That was my understanding, but the detail is not needed in the Constitution. That is to do with the process. The other point he made about the ward council, and I do have a lot of sympathy about people coming on the council, as I did, wanting to represent my residents. And my background in producing the neighbourhood plan for Ongar, I felt that I had a good stance on what people wanted. However, there is the other situation that ethically, as a planning councillor, you actually have to look at it impartially, fairly. This is the LG's words. Impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without bias. And that means on planning, material planning concerns. Nothing to do with lobbying from residents. And I know that some people in the community feel that it's done on party lines or lobbying. And there is a perception, and I think that by having the ward councillor having a slightly different role would actually make it easier for that ward councillor to represent somebody's views without fear or favour. On the point about why excluding, made a note about why excluding. I think there was a bit of confusion about excluding the councillor. I think that the impression I got, and again it's in the process, is that if something is coming up for Ongar, for example, I would not be allowed to sit on that particular committee, and there'd be a substitute put in there in my place. But obviously the process is being finalised. I don't know if that's what you meant. And then the last thing that Councillor Pond was talking about having it removed one step further from the people. Now, I also understand that in the PAS recommendations, and certainly at the conference that I went to, that they're actually encouraging more engagement between councillors and officers, and also between the community and officers, mostly, if possible, at pre-application stages. We've got a lot of allocated sites coming up, and it's far better to have the developers understand the concerns of the community before they have finalised their plans, when it's easier to change.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Just like to remind everybody we are dealing with the first amendment first, which is to replace 9 with 11. So we can go back to that, please. Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. On the point of 9 members, yeah, I did mention 11. I also mentioned 5. I also mentioned 8, but you've picked 11 to come back with. 9 was a number that PAS thought would work best for us. They not only looked at our planning committees, I think they went pretty much through the whole planning department, officers as well as the committees. So 9 was their recommendation. 9 was what came out of our working group as a majority vote. 9 came out of the Constitution Working Group. 9 came out of the Cabinet. I see no reason to change it from that. Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm having some difficulty on deciding how to vote on Amendment 1, because I actually think it depends on what happens with Amendment 2 as regards Recommendation G. If Recommendation G is continued with, local ward members cannot vote or partake on something within their own ward that's on the agenda, bearing in mind all the normal prejudicial rules, then I would be in favour of 11. But if we are going to get rid of G and mean that that ward member can continue playing a full part on that agenda, then I would support 9. So I have to say, I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I actually think you need to decide Amendment 2 first, because it does have a material, well, certainly for me, has a material impact on whether I want to support 9 or 11.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Allen Lyne.
Thank you, Chairman. The number 9 was selected or advised by PAS, and they did a comparison of other councils. We are unusual in having 4 planning committees at the moment, which is not acceptable in terms of efficiency. But what we've actually seen is many other authorities have only got 1 planning committee. So the idea having 2 planning committees will ensure the throughput of planning applications in a timely manner, and it is seen as the most reasonable way of going forward. I mean, you could say 7, 11, 12, 15, as long as however many you want, and we're back to where we are now. So I think it's important we go with the recommendations at the moment of having 9, and should this be reviewed, if this is an issue, then that can be looked at after the review period. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I suppose I should have some fondness for the current system that we have that is no longer working for us, as I think I was the original seconder when we went to 4 committees and every councillor was given a place on planning. But it isn't working today, and that's where we are. What we're looking for is a more professional way of working planning, and we need members who have taken the necessary training. Too often, we have members sitting on planning committees that have not taken the annual training that they're meant to take. And we have officers sometimes who watch councillors make mistakes in committees because they haven't done the training that's required. The recommendation we had from PAS, after much work with the planning officers and the planning department and senior officers, has come back with these recommendations. A 9 on each committee is a manageable number of members with an easy way of flowing between the two committees that mean that they can be fully trained, better trained than before, and actually be able to protect us from getting into this position again. What we're proposing this evening is no different to any other council up and down the land. It's a sensible way forward. 9 is a sensible number. As we've heard, it could have been 5 or it could have been 8, but 9 is a sensible compromise for a council of our size and a district of its geographical nature. So members, as the person who originally brought forward the current system, I will be glad to see the back of it if it makes us more professional in planning. Personally, I'll be glad not to sit on planning in the future, because I know that I've got members in my group who have specialised over many years and taken a passion in planning, and they are much better suited and trained in order to do that. And I will say one more thing, which I will not say later on again this evening when we get to the other amendments. I've already mentioned the appeals that have gone against us, and so far the tally is about £200,000. And in Councillor Whitehouse's earlier explanation of his amendments, he talked about the wider scope, so therefore I should only imagine he's talking about delegated officer judgments. We've only failed on 2 of our officer judgments. We've only had two officer refusals that have been overturned at appeal. That's a far cry from our position as members making decisions. So I just think we need to bear that in mind as well. We, as members, need to be more professional in how we deal with planning, dealing on planning grounds. And actually, as a ward member, that puts you in a stronger position when you go to those meetings, because you can talk with passion about your community, you can talk about your passion on certain sites. But actually, when it comes to the decision-making, it will be done on planning grounds. And I've seen some of our best councillors in this area who have overturned officers' decisions through force of argument. That's what it should be about, but it should be professional forces of argument that actually stack up in the quasi-judicial law that is planning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Whitehouse, would you like to come back at all on your amendment? Your first
I'll leave
amendment?
it later, that's all right.
Councillor Morgan, you wanted to speak?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. Could I just ask Councillor Whitbread, over what period was the 200,000? He keeps saying about the 200,000 that we've been charged things. He hasn't said over what period, please?
Okay. Councillor Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. 12 months. I believe that's 18 months, being correct about the 200,000. And let's be open about this. One of the worst decisions was made in Chigwell, where Councillor Morgan is on the planning committee, which is the Chigwell nursery site, which is going to cost this council a lot of money in cost. So Plan South has probably got one of the worst records.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. I think I'm actually a Grange-Hill councillor, but that's fine. The issue being is that the things that we wanted to put, or I personally wanted to put forward, wasn't accepted by the chair of planning, and it's where we failed as well. Thank you.
Councillor Whitbread.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the Grange Hill councillor of a site in Grange Hill admits to having no impact on Plan South. No, you're Grange Hill, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Grange Hill, but it wasn't Chigwell.
Yeah, but Chigwell is part of... Yeah, exactly. Really, you know, you have to engage in the process.
Councillor Tim Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to move this debate along, and I think it's really important on an issue as important as this that we actually have the most productive debate. And I think Councillor Murray actually made a really, really valid point. And as long as it's within the rules, I think actually it makes a lot of sense to take Amendment 2, vote on that, and then discuss Amendment 1. I think that's a very valid point. Makes sense to me as well. Thank you.
Councillor Rose Brooks.
Thank you very much. I think we all recognise planning needs to change. and that though it's rare for Plan South, which has 25 members, for all to be there, it's often about 80%, but it is a bit unwieldy. As a member of the minority group here, I do respect the fact that we have had professional workshops with very full senior officer participation that were there for everyone to attend. And I think it's best if we all know we've made mistakes. I'm sure that other planning committees have, not just Plan South, over certain decisions that have cost us money. But I think it's best if we sort of stick to a very professional argument on this. I myself feel that though the PAS have recommended perhaps 9, that I support 11, because it just gives that little more wiggle room, really. I've looked at Bassetlaw District Council, where I spend a lot of time, and looked at their planning committees, and as Nigel Richardson has said many times, we have far too many meetings here, and I think it's a really good idea to slim it down to 2 very workable committees. What we've slimmed down from 58 to 54 councillors. What is another 2? Let's please have 11. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehouse, please.
Thanks. Yes, I mean, the objections we've heard to 11 seem to boil down to it's more difficult to train 22 members than 18 members, which I really don't follow at all. From Councillor Dadd, this issue about the ward member's role. And I think what she's doing is conflating a ward member's role as a member of the planning committee, where they have to make planning judgments and do on planning issues, as we all should be doing anyway. And actually, it's on if members aren't already doing that, they need to take a look at themselves. Because if we had poor performance, it is because we're making bad decisions as much as anything else. And that's down to members and decision-making, not particularly to structures. But she forgets you've also got non-planning committee ward councillors. Each ward now has 3 members. So there's always going to be ward members who aren't on the planning committee, who, if necessary, can make representations and don't need to rely on a member of the committee who is a ward councillor to make those recommendations. And because that is the fact, taking a ward member out of the ability to vote seems completely unnecessary. And the other thing, if we did go for 11, the very involved process that Councillor Dadd described, but having to completely rewrite our processes about substitutes and so forth, would not be necessary, because we could operate with the existing substitute rules.
Councillor Ken-Williamson, is this on the First Amendment?
I think we're straying into all sorts of amendments here,
we
Chair, so I wanted to answer that particular point, I think, is where I'm coming from.
Okay.
I think we're now linking the two, but taking up the points raised by Councillor Whitehouse, I think the suggestions that ward member and Councillor Owens comment as well, local ward members would be afforded the right to speak, I believe, without a time limit, which I think is correct, and there could be 3 of them, so it could actually be a very long meeting for some of these. It has always been at the chairman's discretion whether he allows people to come back in debate, whether it's councillors or even applicant agents or whatever, whoever's speaking at the meeting. And I think that's a good thing, because the chairman has to run the meetings. On the point of ward members not voting or debating, I think it's a great burden off of everybody's shoulders, to be perfectly honest. How many of us have been badgered in Waitrose or Tesco's or whatever by an applicant? I certainly have on several occasions. And apart from the party line of I can't say anything that would fetter my decision, I think it would be really good to say, I'm quite happy to come along and support you in your debate, because I haven't got a vote on this. I can go above and beyond for my board members by actually having a discussion, because I know I will not be able to vote on it. I think we've all got a heavy burden on our shoulders with some of these local planning decisions, and I think this actually improves it for all of us.
Does anybody wish to speak on the First Amendment still? Okay, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I've always supported the 9 because I believe that actually the smaller numbers stops the continuous, I don't want to repeat myself or repeat anything that's been said, and then 9 more times it repeats itself. But I'm looking at pro rata, and obviously 50% will go to the majority party, 25% to the LRA, and 25% to another. So I actually feel that we've given 11, we're allowing one more party member from the majority, but we're also allowing some of the individual parties to actually be represented, which I think if you make it at 9, there's a very good chance that a lot of the individuals and independents will not get a say. So I think actually I'm now changing to 11 because I think it will just give a more chance for the independents to have some sort of say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the First Amendment?
Yeah, First Amendment, Chairman. Chairman, taking on board the point that's just been made by Councillor Allgood, which is a really good point. It is about representation. But of course, the 9 will be prorated. So currently that would be 5 Conservatives, 2 LRA, 1 Liberal and 1 Independent. And I think that's the way it would run for the first municipal year and then would be reviewed when we get to the appointments panel next year. And it might be at that time, on a review, you might say we need to go to 11. But the recommendation we have before us this evening and the recommendation of PAS is for 9. And I think we should go with the 9. We'll review at the next municipal year, but actually all groups will be represented. The choice is who will take the independent place or will it be a green place? But the 3 major groups on this council, which is ourselves as the majority group, yourselves as the largest second group, and then the Liberal Democrats as the 3rd largest group, will all be represented on the panels. It's just where the spare position, whether it goes to an independent or it goes to the Green member, as to who would take that position. But I think the 9 works, and for the first municipal year, that is a sensible way to take it, and then review at the annual appointments panel next year as to whether or not we feel it might work better with 11. But 9 is what's before us this evening, and I think we should agree on the 9.
Councillor Murray, is this for the First Amendment?
Well, it is. I'm not sure whether this will be a material consideration, but I've got absolutely no intention of seeking the place.
Okay. All right, Councillor Bedford, is it the First Amendment?
Thank you, Councillor Murray, for that comment that you just made. Of course, you are still able to come and comment on any application you wish, even as a ward member.
Right, if that's all the debate on the First Amendment, we need to go back to the Second Amendment. Okay. Councillor Morrison.
Right, thanks, Chairman. So the debate so far has hinged around 2 numbers, 11 and 9. So the justification for the 9 is that the PAS have recommended it strongly, and that's their considered opinion. Can I just have a little bit more explanation about what their reasoning is for that? Because so far I've heard people give opinions about 11 and 9, and I'm still not clear what the reasoning is behind the 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. Planning Advisory Service, PAS, are the experts in the field. We had several meetings with them. They've looked through everything. I can't speak for their reasoning, total reasoning for 9, but I understand that the need is to concentrate the debate. And I think Councillor Allgood summed it up for us. How many of us have sat in area plans meetings where so many people have to have their say? And pretty much they're saying the same thing most of the time. and quite often it's not to do with planning at all when they do stand up and speak. So it is 9 people who understand planning, who understand what's going on, who understand. How many times have you been to a plans meeting where there's a refusal, and when it comes to the officer saying, okay, what's your reasons for refusal, there's blank looks around the chamber. This is why we're doing this. This is the main thrust of this, that we have 9 people sitting there understanding what they're doing.
Right, Councillor Chris Whitby.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we should move to a vote. We've debated this in full. I think we should move to a vote on this particular amendment.
We've got Councillor Lyons who wants to speak.
I would, what I would like to do now is to go back to Amendment 2. Sorry about that, Chris. And get that one sorted out because of what Councillor Murray said, actually. So if we can go back
so
to...
Councillor Lyon wanted to speak. We need to ask him what he wanted to speak.
Councillor Murray, sorry, Councillor Lyon, did you wish to speak on Amendment 1 or 2?
On 1, Chairman.
Okay. Well, after you, though, we're going to go...
Okay, it was just in terms of clarifying the question by the PAS, what their reasoning was. And I quote from their report, the reason for this was it gives more opportunity for community representation by ward councillors not on the committee, enables more training for planning committee councillors, creates a better decision making and optimises resourcing costs. So that was their recommendation.
Now, we'll move on back to number 2, so try and get that done. Anybody have any views on... Oh, a seconder, sorry. I need a seconder. Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Amos has seconded everything already, so let's just go into the debate about 2.
Okay. We're now down to debate 2 again, please, if we can. Anybody have any thoughts on that, please?
Yeah, read it out again.
Read it out again? Okay, the amendment was to delete recommendation G, on which is G is the local ward members not be permitted to debate or vote on any planning application within their ward. So, anyone? Right. Councillor Nigel Bedford.
Thank you. I think we've already talked about this at great lengths, and the whole idea behind this is obviously local ward members will be able to represent the residents of their ward more fully, in greater detail, and be able to do it with passion, without fear or favour, as has been mentioned before. I don't see that we should strike that out. I think that is an absolutely legitimate condition that we need in. So I would say that we move to a vote not to strike out G.
A seconder for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Is either vote on G, the deletion of G or not, really, which is the same thing, isn't it? So the discussion, do they accept the amendment or not, is
Right.
what's being asked.
Actually, what I have to ask is, do you accept the amendment or not? No. Okay, right.
So let's go to a vote on it then. If that's all of it, let's go to a
Okay, we'll go for a vote on that one, please.
Councillor Owen.
Councillor Owen.
I had a question, and I appreciate it's more on the process, but it's something I don't quite understand. And it is, if the ward councillor is on the committee and his item comes up, is he just excluded from that item, or is he totally excluded from the committee? Because I think it was suggested he's totally excluded from the committee, which will impact my voting on this.
Could you clarify that, Ken Williamson?
I think in answer to the question is, it's, I think in item 2, agenda management. I think it's up to Democratic Services to work through the management of those agendas. And it may well be that there is a ward member that would not take part in one item. But I think the idea would be to obviate any of that happening. And if it does happen, they would not be excluded from the whole meeting just for that one item. If nobody else wants to speak.
Do a vote.
If nobody else wants to speak.
Yes, could we have a vote, please, on Amendment 2? All in favour? Okay, wait, hold on. Right. Okay.
So clarify, so The amendment 2 is to delete that recommendation, bit G. Who's in favour and who's against?
Right. I'm sorry about my voice. It's very croaky at the moment, and hopefully I will get better. But not quite away, I don't think. Right. The amendment 2, who's in favour of it?
Which is to delete.
Yeah.
To read it.
Sorry?
You want to read it out again?
Okay. The amendment 2 was delete recommendation G. Do you all know what that is, or shall I read it? It says the local ward members not be permitted to debate or vote on any planning application within their ward. So are you in favour
Of deleting it.
of deleting it?
$15.
And against?
$24.
So that's accepted.
That's accepted.
Abstentions.
Sorry, so it's rejected.
Oh, sorry.
1.
So that's rejected.
Okay, that one is rejected. Now we move on to back to amendment 1. So if we can finish that, please, for a vote. All in favour of that amendment? Which is in recommendation 1C, delete 9 and replace with 11, so that the whole recommendation reads that the number of members on each planning committee be 11 as laid out within the suggested amendments to Article 10 of the Constitution. Are those in favour?
$17.
Thank you. Those again?
$23.
Those abstaining?
1.
So that is rejected again. And now we need to come to amendment number 3. And that is accept that the Article 10, this is item H, sorry, add at the end of the recommendation, accept that Article 10(2) should read, newly elected members may be appointed to the Planning Committee at the next ordinary meeting of the full council, provided they have suitable training and relevant experience. Who would like to speak? John Whitehouse.
Yeah, I covered this before, but that seems a long time ago, so I'll mention it again. The change here is to change relevant planning experience into relevant experience, because there's an awful lot of experience which may not be directly involved in local government planning, but is sufficiently adjacent or relevant to the sort of regulatory and, if you like, quasi-judicial issues that they should not prevent someone from stepping into the role of member of the planning committee. I don't think I need to say any more.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm sure Councillor Williamson or Councillor Larn will come in with a better answer than myself to that. But to me, it's about having the right people on planning who have done the right training and have got the right experience. And there may be councillors who just join our council after year 1, already have a good knowledge of planning, already have an understanding, have already put themselves out to do the training. And they're the sort of people you want to be on them committees, because they have a grasp of what they're doing. There is, as we've already heard, the role for other councillors to come in and represent their residents on the committees. They just won't be voting. But what we're looking for here, and I've said it several times this evening, is a professional outlook on planning, and therefore we need members of that committee that are properly trained. I know this evening the 10 members that I will be putting forward, and I will give those to Democratic Services as quickly as possible after the meeting this evening, and they will be members who have a good knowledge of planning and have done the training accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Chairman. On balance, I'm not going to be supporting this amendment. I do accept that it could be a bit rough and ready on newly elected members, but if we've got clear training provided for planning, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect all members to go through that training before they sit on the planning committee, and who actually decides what is suitable training and relevant experience. So though I have sympathy with the motivation behind the amendment, and I accept that it might be a bit rough and ready to begin with on newly elected members, but it will actually encourage them to do the planning as quickly as they possibly can, and I accept that they might not be able to do it for the first year, but they will have other things that will keep them busy in their first year. So on balance, I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Don't quite understand why Councillor Whitbread and Councillor Murray went on about training, because this doesn't change anything, proposal about training. It purely is about the relevant planning experience. The suitable training words stay in.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Chairman, I was just going to say that at present it's easy to find members who've got relevant planning experience because we're all sat on the planning committee. But in the future, it's not going to be so easy. I mean, you may be lucky and have someone like Councillor Dad who's got that experience, but it's very unlikely that other people coming in to be councillors have got planning experience, but they may, as Councillor Whitehouse said, have experience in other relevant matters. So all we're doing is taking out the word planning from experience.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alan Lyon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This was debated at the working group, and the amendments were put in to say relevant planning experience, because there was someone who had had experience elsewhere and therefore came into the council with that experience. So it was related to planning, and I think it's important that we actually make sure that those people that are on this particular planning committee have the relevant experience and can hit the ground running, because if a new councillor is appointed and comes onto the planning committee without that experience, that means that the decisions may or may not be as robust as they should be. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I really don't understand why we're debating this suitable training and relevant planning experience. When I go and see my doctor, I hope he's had the relevant medical experience. So if I'm doing planning, I hope somebody's had a bit of knowledge about planning, so I don't see any reason to go any further on this.
Anybody else wish to speak? Right. Excuse me. Right. I shall read this out. It's forgive me, Councillor Shmerti Patel.
Hi, just sort of to help the debate forward a little bit on the training part. I've done the online training this time round, and it was really, really easy. So I think we might just be sort of arguing about a moot point, that it's so easy to get that training done, and then you can be on the planning committee. It really isn't a big thing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come to the vote on this. The Amendment 3 says, add to the end of the recommendation H, add except that Article 10, in brackets 2, should read newly elected members may be appointed to the Planning Committee at the next ordinary meeting of the full council, provided they have suitable training and relevant experience. I'd like to ask who's in favour of that?
Sorry, Councillor Murray.
And who is
6.
for?
6-4.
Who's against? Who's against? Sorry. Same sides.
29.
Thank you. And who's abstaining?
5 abstentions.
Thank you very much. That motion is lost, and we move on.
So now we go back to the debate on this.
We go back to the debate, agenda item 4. So who wants to speak? Councillor Murray.
I just want to say that after the debate and the decisions that we've made, and the reason why the reason that was given for why we're dealing with it tonight, I will be giving this my full support now.
Thank you. Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Murray. I think I go back to what I said an hour ago, that I recommend that we accept items 1A to 1I on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Councillor Alan Lyon.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, but the report is as it is. This is where we need to be, and we need to go forward on this as quickly as we can. So I fully support those recommendations in item 4. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Jamie McIver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd also like to thank all members that have taken part in this process, because I appreciate this has been it has every reason to be urgent. And I'd like to thank all members that have taken part, and having sat on the Constitution Working Group, I have no doubt that there has been really thorough and good debate from all members from all different groups. I did just want to make a point, and I am mindful to support this, but I wanted to put on record my concerns, and to be honest, I think this will be the concerns that many members share, because I think we'll all agree this is a far from ideal situation, but it's a desperate situation, and it's right that we take action, and inaction would be the worst thing to do at all. And when I was considering what I would say tonight, I thought I would look at our Constitution itself, and particularly to see what is the role of a member, what is our purpose here? And of course we know we're accountable to the ballot box, but there's a particular line of our Constitution that I think is relevant to this evening, and that is that councillors have a responsibility to the whole community, but a special duty to their ward constituents. And we've heard good debate this evening about how you can do that in various ways. There's the current system where you're able to go and show your vote for something in support of your constituents and in support of your community that you represent. But equally, there will be a new neo version as to how you can do this under the new proposal. But it is particularly with regards to our duty and our special duty to the area that we represent that I have a slight concern with some of the proposals. But I'm a fair and reasonable person. I'm also prepared to this has a go, because we will have the opportunity, I hope, to make suggestions in the future. Point A on the proposal, reducing to 2 committees, I understand and I accept, and it makes a lot of sense. But personally, I would rather that went slightly further and was geographically relevant. Rather than A and B, I would sooner prefer East and West, North and South, so that the membership of that committee has a bit more familiarity with the areas they are looking at. That is just something I wanted to put on record. I don't necessarily agree that the agenda planning should be based on the terms in our report. Personally, I would rather see there be geographical relevance to a planning application when it's going to a committee. I think that makes perfect sense. It makes all the sense, in fact. But I also understand the urgency. I also wanted to put on record about point E. I think this should be happening anyway. As part of the situation the council finds itself in, I think all members, because whether you're helping residents with a query or whether you're voting on an application, good knowledge on planning should be part of what we do. It is probably the most important function of this council. Now, as district councillors, I have the privilege to be a county councillor too, but as district councillors, you sometimes wonder in your community, what can we actually do? Because we can't, as district councillors, necessarily deal with highways issues. We can't necessarily get too in-depth with adult social care, but planning is something we can help with, whether we're on the committee under the new proposal or as a representative being and representing our residents. So I think that we should all be doing extra training and planning. It certainly should be something that's offered. And as Councillor Dadd mentioned earlier, it's right that we engage further with our community. It's right that we're able to represent them passionately. Now, point F and G I'll take together. This is the bit that doesn't sit right with me, which is why I did vote for the amendment to remove particularly the point about local ward members. I do not want to go home this evening to say that I've just voted to remove my right to vote on planning applications in my ward. In the ward where people, in my instance, people in Ongar have elected me because they want me to be their voice. Tonight, if I vote for that, I'm going home to say, and I'm telling everyone tomorrow in Ongar High Street in my surgery, hi everyone, just to let you know I can't vote on planning anymore for you. That doesn't sit right with me, but I understand the desperate situation we're in. So I understand the reason for it. But I think that's something we must look to review in 9 months' time, because personally I just don't see how that's right. And the reason why I don't see it as being right, because I would go as far to say it's a bit of constitutional vandalism. If we have a special duty to our constituents, then how on earth can we possibly say that we don't want to vote on matters within the ward that we're elected to represent? So I do have a slight issue with that. And I just want to give a practical example. At the moment, it says that we'll be able to go to the planning committee and under the chairman's discretion, we'll be able to speak. I think that's a fantastic element. Personally, I'd rather that be a right to speak. But also, there's a practical reason why that may not work, and time will tell. I represent Ongar, which includes High Ongar. Just the other side of my ward boundary is Nine Ashes, somewhere that Councillor Balcombe knows very well from his previous seat. Now, Nine Ashes, a planning application, would have a huge impact on High Ongar in every way possible. But under the proposal, I wouldn't necessarily be able to go and speak about that, but my residents would expect me to. Now, of course, under the current setup, I would be able to happily communicate with Rural East, which is where Nine Ashes would fall. I would be able to speak to Councillor Balcombe, Councillor Hadley or Councillor Morgan, and I have no doubt that they would be pleased to address the concerns of my residents, who ultimately are the neighbours to their residents. But what if I don't have that relationship with those councillors? What if they're of an opposing party and they deliberately don't want to help me? What if they're not able to attend the meeting? So the Constitution is far more important than just from some sort of procedural change. This has to be bulletproof for the future, for a situation where we don't have the political setup that we have today, where we don't necessarily have good relationships with one another. So I think it's very important we remember that we're voting on a constitution tonight, not necessarily some planning rules. So what would I prefer to see? What will I be looking for? Firstly, and I know we all know the song YMCA, I've come up with something better, it's MCA. I prefer geographical membership. I would prefer geographical committee, and I would prefer a geographical application. I think people who are within a proximity of an area have far greater knowledge than people that don't. For example, if I have the privilege of sitting on planning committee A or B, and we've got something right in rural Nazing, I may not have the knowledge, in the same way that a councillor for Waltham Abbey can't necessarily be expected to have the knowledge of something happening in Berners Roding, a rural part of Ongar, and that's reasonable. So one thing I would certainly stress is under point E, I do believe that part of the training should be some geographical awareness of how our district is. What are the demographics in this part of our district? What are the towns like? What is the population? It needs to be more than just planet merits. It needs to be further training. And secondly, ward members having the right to speak. To me, this is a bit non-negotiable, but I'm prepared for this to have its go. I think it needs to be put on record that in 9 months' time, when we do come to review this, that we can make material changes. I do not want to see ward members unable to vote in their area. And I'm really grateful to Councillor Sue Jones for her amendment, because parish councils have been incandescent with me, partly because they don't feel consulted over this matter, but secondly, because they're worried they're going to lose their voice. Because of Councillor Jones's amendment, I feel I'm able to support this. And I'm also feel I'm able to support it because of the fact we're going to be reviewing it. I want this to work. I want this council to thrive. I want this council to be able to make its decisions. If we lose our right to have decisions on planning, what is the point in being a district councillor? One would argue it's the most important part of shaping the future of our district. And finally, we've heard a lot of bashing tonight from all of us about, we're in a really desperate state because of where we've got to. Let's just remember that sometimes we do get it right. Let's just remember that next application. We got that right. Councillors know their communities better than anybody else, and I have the utmost respect for PAS, but, PAS, they are not elected to represent our residents. We are. We know our communities best. So that's why, above all, I'm uncomfortable going tomorrow to my surgery to tell people that had a go at me today about this. I'm uncomfortable to say I voted for it, but I'd be even more uncomfortable to say we've lost all rights to vote on planning matters. So I think we need to give this a go, but I do so with a lot of resistance, because I'm very uncomfortable about voting to lose my right as a district councillor to vote on matters in my ward. I'm very uncomfortable with that, and I want that to be on record. And when we talk about some successive appeals, just look at what happened in Ongar. when a community knew it wasn't the right thing for them because it fell short of standards. Officers wanted us to vote that through in Greenstead Road, just like they did with Next. We said no. We were proved to be right. So councillors do know best, and what I do not want to see is a power grab from individual ward members to a committee which doesn't have geographical knowledge. So let's see how this goes, would be my view, but I think it is essential we have on record from the administration tonight and the council this evening that in the future we can look to review this in all levels of detail if some of the practical reasons I've mentioned tonight, Mr Chairman, are to be cause to be a concern as opposed to a merit under the new proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Wiskin.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Could I ask that this is a significant change from an individual man on the street or lady on the street's point of view? Everyone I've spoken to said, I expect you to be voting and supporting our local issues. It's quite clear, there's a strong feeling from the opposing benches that you do not agree with that position. However, will you take it upon yourselves to communicate that firmly to the residents of Epping Forest District that it is the decision to remove the voice and the vote from the ward representative? And bear in mind, they are the people who put us here, and certain members who are no longer here suffered for that. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wiskin. Well made point. No member loses their voice in this case. All members can still go and talk very strongly and passionately on their local ward issues. What we are doing, not through being forced to do, but because we have to change, we are making sure that the current planning system, a new planning system, is fit for purpose. The current planning system is no longer fit for purpose, and that's seen through results. No member of the public will thank you if we continue in the same route, we get more and more appeals against us, and because of those appeals we have to start cutting services, because that's the real fact of life that we're facing. Every member here will be going to their meetings and they will be speaking up for local people about the issues that matter to them. The difference is now is that the people voting on it will be doing it on a planning basis. The arguments will be on a planning basis. And that's all that really changes here. If members are passionate enough to attend committees, and we've heard tonight how sometimes you only get 80% of people attend Plan South or 70% of people attend Plans East or West, this will give you, if you feel passionately about an application, the opportunity to go and speak on it. That's what's most important, and the people making that decision will be well trained and understand planning to a greater degree. And like that, not only are you protecting your residents, you're protecting the future of the district. That's the most important thing. And no member who has played an active part in this process, whether it started with the process that officers went through with PAS, whether they played a part in the Cabinet meeting, and I always pay tribute to the councillors who attend Cabinet on a regular basis, including Councillor Murray, who always comes along and always contributes, or the members who went to the working group, working session that was sent up for members, or those members that attended Councillor Lyons' committee. Plenty of opportunity to shape what's coming forward and make sure that residents' voices are held. What we haven't seen tonight, the councillors who are speaking quite often haven't attended any of those meetings, particularly the ones that shaped the original thinking. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ken Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. My note said something I said an hour and 5 minutes ago. It's now an hour and 20 minutes ago, I think. I started off saying that this was not a knee-jerk reaction to the PAS report. We've had desperate times mentioned a few times through the evening. We were looking at this anyway. It was inevitable that we were going to go down this route. Some things had to change, and I think everybody agrees that. So that's my first point. We already have a geographical DDMC goes across Epping Forest District Council. Members are drawn from various wards. So I see no difference in this. On the F&G point, I've already spoken. Councillor McIver obviously is the voice of Ongar, but when it comes to planning, the voice of Buckhurst Hill gets it in one ear from the people that want it and one ear from the people that don't. So 50% of the people don't want to listen to what we're saying, and 50% desperately want to listen to what we're saying, depending which way they are on the argument. I really don't like the phrase constitutional vandalism. I really think that's a bit below the belt. But and as to Next, I quite like Next, but then we lost it. But picking out individual applications is easy. There's lots we did get wrong that haven't been mentioned. Again, I said it earlier, I think it makes the ward members' work actually easier. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Pond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to allude to Councillor McIver's speech, which I thought was really on the right lines, very eloquent, and I think is something we ought to pay attention to. I'm very glad to welcome Councillor McIver to the independent benches, though I've no doubt he might be a short stay only. I appreciate that, but it proves that I think he has an independence of voice. So, where are we? I think that if the review, which we're going to be holding this time next year, is to mean anything, it should be an open review of the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed new system. And I think it should have the old system as an alternative, or something like it, to go back to, not just tweaks. I particularly agree with Councillor McIver on the geographical aspect of the committees. I think we are in danger of trying to adjudicate on things we know very little about. And, you know, whatever planning grounds you like, the local knowledge cannot be compensated for. And also, we live in very strange times. I can't be the only person to have listened to the promulgations from the government, and particularly from Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves, on the future of the planning system, and the fact that we may have to accommodate vastly more building to satisfy a centrally dictated need. I can remember people on the Conservative benches in 2008, 2009 excoriating the East of England plan, and in particular John Prescott. Now, I've always been rather politically neutral in these things, but I do think that we are very silly to destroy our established planning committee system. You know, I do not like the idea of Messrs. Rayner and Whitbread. Yes, it sounds like a defunct brewery, doesn't it? I think we would be very unwise to carry on with this new system as a dyed-in-the-wool, unchangeable system. I think we need, at the time of the review, to go back to something like the geographically based system, which I personally value very much. And so, if the leader will give us a clear indication that this time next year we will be working from tabula rasa, we will see how the new system works. I agree, it's maybe worth a try, but I would just enrol one word of warning to Conservatives. Prior to 1996, I think it was, you had exactly the same system, with pro rata committees pontificating on applications that they knew very little about. And at the little tea party you organised for long-serving members, Mr. Chairman, I was sitting next to a Conservative member who was defeated at the last election, and she said, "Can you tell me why there has not been a Conservative member elected in Loughton for 40 years? And I hazarded a guess at that. But the reason that the Loughton Residents Association was formed was because of a very bad planning decision which related to the establishment of the Presto supermarket in Loughton against all local wishes. And so that was changed, and local wishes became paramount in many ways in our planning committee system. So I applaud what Councillor McIver said. I hope the review will be a very wide-ranging one and will include the option of going back to something like we have at the moment. And I would suggest that the review actually took place at the end of the calendar year 2025, not at this time of the year. So somewhere towards the end when everybody can be present, because I echo the points made earlier on, and I do apologise for being a bit late, about a meeting discussing such fundamental matters being held in the middle of the holiday season, which I think is quite wrong. However, we are where we are. So long as there is a reasonable review, I'm happy to go along with this, but I think we are giving ourselves more trouble than we might think we are.
Councillor Chris Whitbread.
Chairman, thank you, and I won't prolong matters because I'm sure the recommendations will now be moved for members to decide upon. What I would say to Councillor Pond is whoever he was having tea with got their dates wrong, because we've had Conservative councillors in Loughton over the past 40 years, Councillor James Hart, Councillor Mitchell Cohen and others who have been Conservative councillors in recent times in Loughton, and we look forward to having Conservative councillors again in the future in Loughton. So we will see. Well, things have a way of going round and coming round. With regards to his thoughts about Rayner, we don't disagree too much. Rayner is a danger to Epping Forest, and the Labour Party's plans for the additional homes would be a really big threat to Epping Forest. In fact, every blade of Greenbelt would be concreted over if they had their way, and they will certainly pick on areas like Epping Forest before anywhere else. The truth is, we made the right decisions in putting in place a local plan that gives us additional support against the opinion of many members here. It was a difficult decision, but we did it, and we have a local plan that gives us protection, and we have a set number of homes that gives us some protection from the dark arts of the Labour government. So we should feel that we welcome that. With regards to the review, everything is set out very clearly within these proposals. You've heard me already say we'll look at the numbers when we get to the appointments panel next year. The important thing is that we move this forward. It's the right thing to do. And I remember plans A and B because it was when I first came on the council and they disappeared in the early 2000s. The system worked really well for many years. You had many councillors on there, including Joan Davis from the Labour Party, Mick Welch, John Padfield, lots of old names who have disappeared now from our benches and from this council, but they operated planning in a very professional way back in those times. So in some ways, this is just back to the future, and we will have an efficient planning system. Local members will still be able to go and speak on behalf of their residents, and we will protect our district for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I put my hand up ages ago and the debate's moved on a bit, but I just wanted clarification of clause F. I think it's supposed to say that ward members have the right to speak on behalf of their residents, and the discretion bit, discretion of the Planning Committee Chairman, will be just relating to points of order and information, clarification or information. But it seems to be interpreted in different ways. Some people seem to think the whole thing is discretionary. So can we just be assured that ward members have the right to speak, full stop?
Okay. Councillor Ken Williamson.
Yes is the answer. Yes, board members will have a right to speak, and the further questions and observations will be at the discretion of the chairman.
Councillor Sunga.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak, but Councillor Wiskin brought up the fact that members will be not allowed to speak to voice their residents' concerns. I sit on the licensing committee and I chair some of those committee meetings. And one of the things that you'll find at the licensing committee is that the chairman will afford interested parties to represent views. In this case, we do get councillors that represent their residents at a licensing application. So this is no different. In fact, it's better that ward councillors can come along and represent their residents' views and they can engage with their residents as well publicly without having to declare an interest, because that's what they're elected there to do, is to represent their residents. So, Chairman, I think we should move to the vote now that there's been plenty of debate, but I would certainly be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Tim Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't dwell on the points that have been gone over several times. I feel that people are wanting to get to a vote on this. I just mainly want to address the ward members of Councillor Wiskin and Councillor McIver to put their minds at rest that their elected representatives will not be losing their voices, and actually they will be able to stand up and speak as passionately as they have done this evening. And I personally, for my own ward members, are very much looking forward to being able to come to, whether it's plans A or plans B, and voice my opinion fully without any fear of predetermination or anything else. So I'm very much looking forward to being able to do that, and will support this proposal this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alan Lyon.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of clarification from the report. Quoting from the report, it said, members appeared particularly parochial in their considerations of items on the agenda and focused very much on local issues rather than the council-wide merits of proposals. The Chair also, this was another comment on another one, members focused very much on local issues, and one member was heard to say, I stand up for my local residents. I won't mention which residents. The Chair was also heard to give his own views rather than summing up the committee's view at the end of the debate. And it said, members of, this is in their conclusions, members of the Planning Committee have a duty to consider the whole community, not just local ward constituents, and we do not consider that all committee members properly appreciate their statutory role. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I believe we're at the end of the questions, although we're not. Ken Williamson, Councillor Ken.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go back to what I said an hour and a half ago now, and that is that I recommend that we accept the recommendations 1A to 1I on the agenda. I think. Thank you.
And does that include Councillor Sue Brooks's amendment? It does. Okay. So, can we take that on block then?
You said you take them individually at briefing.
You said we take the amendments individually.
I said we take the amendments individually.
I mean, Chairman, it's perfectly possible to support some of these recommendations and not others. Yes. And, you know, they're severable. They don't all depend on each other, and therefore I think should be voted on separately.
Right. Excuse me when I ask an opinion.
I think we'll have to take them individually.
Excuse me, Councillor, you are correct. We'll take them individually.
You could vote to take a motion forward. Yeah. So they could put a motion to take it on block.
Okay.
If there's a majority that wants to take it on block.
So you're putting forward a motion to take it on block. Okay.
Just before Councillor Murray would like to.
Councillor Murray would like to speak, please.
The majority group have behaved very reasonably up to this stage, and those words don't come easily, Chairman. No. But they have behaved very reasonably on this whole issue, and wouldn't it be very disappointing if they spoilt it right at the end? It's very, very clear what Councillor Whitehouse says. These are separate things. It's you're quite capable of wanting to support some of it, but not all of it. And it's just very unreasonable to kind of, let's just take it on block because we've been here for an hour and 45 minutes. We need to take them separately, as the Chairman has said. And that was, you know, not the Chairman's ruling, but that Chairman has given us a clear indication that that's what he wants to do. And I think that's what we should do.
Okay. Right, so you're putting forward a motion to take them on block?
Chairman, we're happy to take them individually. I just can't see the point when we have a long on the individual amendments that really have now been passed. So actually the recommendations as set out are the substantive and can be taken on block. But if members wish to go through them individually and go on longer and longer, so be it.
Okay, right. One at a time. Okay. Right, it appears we are I've decided to go through them one at a time. So, start. Do we start with recommended the following past review of the Council's planning function monitoring officer be authorised to make the following changes to the Constitution as recommended by the Constitution Working Group and set out in Appendix 1 of the report. Sorry.
I think they've got...
I don't think that's allowed, actually. I think the problem really is my voice today. I do have a problem with it. I will try and speak closer to the microphone. But yeah.
I don't think you need to read them all out because they are as per the agenda, apart from H, which is amended.
To save time, I'm told I don't have to read every one of them out. I just have to go through them one at a time. So, recommendation A. Are we for?
Those in favour?
Okay.
Those in favour?
Those in favour, recommended A.
(36).
Those against?
4.
And those who
Abstained.
abstained?
1.
Thank you very much. That's passed. Item B. All those who are for?
(37).
Those against?
2.
And those who abstain?
2.
Thank you. Item C. All those are for?
(25).
All those against?
14.
And all those who abstain?
Well, somebody's abstaining, I think. Is anybody abstaining on that? Sorry. Okay, thanks. D.
Item D. All those who are for? D, yeah, definitely.
40.
All those who are against?
And I think Councillor Pond's abstaining.
Okay. Right. Item E. All those who are for? E. E.
40.
All those against?
1. No abstentions.
No abstentions. Lovely. Item F. All those who are for?
So are you unanimous? So it's a very slow hand. Sorry, 40.
All those who are against?
E. Sorry, F.
This is F.
Against? No, we haven't. Sorry.
We've got to G yet. We've got to G
Chairman,
yet.
sorry, we haven't finished the vote on F and 1 missing. And Councillor Janet Whitehouse, did you abstain, vote against? Or
No, I
vote
meant to vote for, but I missed it.
Okay. Unanimous.
Right. Now, item G. All those who are for?
(24).
All those who are against?
(16).
Abstentions?
1.
Now, item H.
As amended.
As amended. All those who are for?
36.
All those who are against?
Nil.
Right.
Abstentions.
Abstentions?
4.
Item H. All
Aye.
those who are for? I've done H, it's 2 H's. All right, sorry. Aye. Aye, aye. All those who are for?
$35.
All those who are against?
1.
All those who abstain?
4. That's all carried. They're all carried. All carried.
They are all carried. Thank you very much. Now we go on to...
That's it.
Thank you, everybody. And I could turn the good evening and thank you. Where's the gavel?
Can you just pass that gavel?
At the end. Hang the gavel, somebody. Have I got to do this? Yeah. You can do it.